the Revealing the Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tiaga Prem. This podcast is dedicated to all things higher awareness, conscious living, from yoga and meditation to music and plant-based living and everything in between. This week it was a great honor to sit down and talk to Ally Maz, or Ally Mazerolle. She is the founder of Girlvana Yoga and Ladyvana retreats. And it was such a refreshing conversation, especially as a father of a young girl, because the work that she does is really all about inspiring young women to know who they are and maybe cause a little less pain as they make that transition from girlhood to womanhood, and what it means beyond gender to be a woman during this time, to be connected to that feminine energy. I was really inspired by our conversation. If you want to learn more about Ally Maz, you can follow her on Instagram at Ally Maz, or just Google Girlvana Yoga and you'll see the work that she's doing. She's a vibrant, creative, beautiful person. And it was so great to chat with her about something that's so dear to my heart, being a father and all. So without further ado, I bring you Ally Maz. And those of you who've been listening to this podcast who love the work we're doing, please, please, please review us on iTunes. That way we can use this platform to connect to more and more people. Share it with your friends if you don't use iTunes. We're also working on getting it up on Spotify here, so that should happen any minute now. Yes. So the founder of Girlvana, the incredible Ally Maz, right here on Revealing the Diamond. Sat Nam. Well, thanks a lot, Ally, for taking the time to chat with us on Revealing the Diamond.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why don't we start the conversation off with you explaining to the listeners who you are and what you do? Just give a brief intro and then we can dive into the conversation from there.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Ally, or Ally Maz is my nickname. And who am I? I teach. I think my main purpose in life, I know my main purpose in life is teaching yoga to teenage girls. And so I run programs and workshops and yoga retreats for young women, called Girlvana Yoga. I have a studio in North Vancouver only for another month in a bit, called the Distrikt. And we're a yoga and fitness and community space and have been around for about 5 years. And I'm currently authoring my first book all about yoga, meditation, and mindfulness for teenagers.
Amazing. So you said for another month or so, what was that about?
Yeah, right. Surprise. We just made an announcement last week that we are closing the doors to our studio. Our lease is up, and we just had to make the call. So my business partner, Gian Pablico, and I have been running this space, and both him and I are sort of at a point in our lives where we're both traveling and teaching like crazy, not in Vancouver as much anymore, and just having our priorities shift. I mean, you know what it's like to run a brick and mortar space and how much time and energy and effort goes into it. And then adding travel, and for myself, another business and another book. And I'm also in a long distance relationship and have been for 2 years. And so I'm going to start to shift my time and spend a lot more time in Central America. And so, yeah, we made the call and it just became live, this news. So it's still a bit raw and fresh for our community. But for us, it's definitely been in the works for about a year.
Wow, big changes.
Yes, massive changes going on over here.
Cool. Well, I definitely want to talk to you about teaching yoga to young women. I think that's something that's really important. Like, my partner does a lot of work with women. And then most of all, I have a daughter who's going to be 6 in June. So it's pretty dear to my heart to talk about this stuff. And I've been the work that you do is amazing. Obviously, I haven't got to experience it firsthand, but from aside, I definitely see it happening, and wanted to maybe discuss a little bit about what brought you to teaching young women, and what makes you, what is the story behind it, and what makes you passionate about it and keeps you going. And,
yeah, absolutely. I think it came from me. So I grew up in a competitive dance background. So by the age of, say, 10 years old, I was on stage with fake eyelashes and sparkly costumes and missing school and, upwards to 30 hours a week by the time I was 14 years old. And in that world, it sort of breeds a very strong association to what your body looks like, how it performs. And it really set me up, I think, in my adult life to be hypercritical in terms of my body, my performance, what I look like, who I know, and really developing a value system around the external. And so I started dancing professionally at like 18. I moved to Los Angeles and was at cattle call auditions and learned pretty quickly that industry, regardless of how hard you have worked to train your body, essentially like a professional athlete. It all came down to how tall you are and how much you weigh and how beautiful you are. And it was such a disheartening experience for me, being so passionate about the movement of dance, the expression of dance, and having it boil down to something so surface. So I came back from LA and started practicing yoga when I was about 20 years old, and just started to hear messaging in yoga classes around what it was to honor my body, how to feel movement from the inside out. And all of that felt really counterintuitive to growing up dancing. So I took my first yoga teacher training, started teaching at 21, and was teaching to dancers. I was teaching to young women because I just felt like in terms of injury prevention, in terms of stage fright, in terms of rejection and all these things dancers were going through, I really felt like yoga could support. And that was sort of the first inklings of Girlvana. But I didn't formalize the work until I was 24. I created a little website and a little brand around it and led my first teen girl yoga retreat. And that's kind of the beginning and the why around Girlvana.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's a pretty necessary thing. I mean, even in yoga, that is meant to have this very conscious, just be you message, and it's not really about the surface. Even within those that realm, you see people getting obsessed with what's going on the surface. So
my God, absolutely.
You remove the consciousness from that, and so it magnifies that. So I think that's a really important thing, not to mention how our culture has treated women and objectified the female body. And, and that's not to say you shouldn't express yourself through dance and sexuality.
Sure,
you should feel comfortable to do so and have a practice that supports you to do that.
Absolutely. And it's been about 8 years. And so when I look at where I started with Girlvana to where we're at now, I mean, the world has changed so rapidly, even, from the time you and I were teenagers to what this generation is growing up with is so different. And even I was saying to my editor, because this is what I'm writing about, when I signed a book deal, Trump wasn't president yet. When I submitted my draft, it was just post Me Too movement. And when I started to write again, it was after Parkland school shootings. And so the world is changing at such a rapid pace. So much is going on, and the way we need to support girls continues to change. I mean, the conversations that I'm having now with 13-year-olds are different than what they looked like 8 years ago. 13-year-olds are having sex. 13-year-olds know way more than I did when I was 13. The world is moving a lot quicker for them in this age of information. And so with Girlvana, yoga is one piece, like the asana practice, and our movement is one piece, and our meditation is one piece. But the magic in the work is really the raw conversations around sex, sexuality, consent, body image. These are the deeper conversations I've always been interested in, because I wish that I had someone talking to me about that stuff as a teenager that was maybe not my mom, hearing it from a different person I find sometimes, even though your mom is saying the same thing over and over to you, if my dance teacher said it to me, I was listening in a different way. So I think that's why mentorship at that age is so, so important.
Right. And especially if the young person is open to hearing it. I mean, you need to provide that opportunity. So let's say, for example, just to get a little background on the way this goes down, like let's say, I'm a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl who's interested in dance, and how do they find out about you and about what you're doing? And
so at this point, I mean, Girlvana is now a licensed program. So I have Girlvana teachers worldwide. We have over 100 teachers now. So off of our Instagram, because that is their world. So most likely they're coming through social and seeing, a friend tags, Girlvana, or something directs them or points them or it shows up on their Explore page. If they're in Vancouver, great. We have lots of programs running in Vancouver. If they're not in Vancouver, on the website, we've got lots of classes, kind of pointing people into different areas. And then we run 2 yoga retreats a year. So one at spring break and one at summer. And we get girls from all over the world. We get girls from the UK, from California, from Boston, from Prince Edward Island. But we also recognize that it's not always girls finding us. It's their moms, it's their guidance counselors, it's their eating disorder recovery clinics. And so some girls are there on their own free will, and some girls are there because their parents have forced them to come. But I would say within the first day of retreat, they really can feel how safe that space is. And we always see, we run 5 days, like a summer camp experience, and we see girls make some pretty massive breakthroughs and kind of leave with long-lasting friendships. And it's a pretty remarkable, kind of unexplainable experience in terms of what goes down. It's very intimate. It's very raw. We're having conversations about suicide, self-harm, rape, molestation. When girls can feel safe enough to talk about what has happened to them and see that they're not alone in their experience, can provide a very deep level of healing, because especially at that age, that feeling of separation is so profound.
Right.
And so giving girls the opportunity to see themselves in each other is really a big part of what we do.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's so key to have those conversations during this time. I got a tough question for you here to see.
Sure.
Only because I've faced this before, and that is, every so often you get somebody who's coming at this stuff from a very academic background who says like, this is amazing work that you're doing. You're diving into some really deep areas. What makes you qualify? And this isn't me asking it, only because I've had this question before.
I get this question every day in my life.
Yeah, so, good. Yeah, so we can talk about it. So I'm glad. And they say, well, don't you need to have some kind of psychological training? I mean, for me, it's with recovery and addiction. It's been a long journey of recovery. I'm not a trained from an academic standpoint in counseling, but through the practices that I do and through the life experience that I've had a lot of people get clean and sober through doing the practices that I've done, and I speak from my experience. So and then I get those questions, and they're
absolutely,
and I'm open to answering them, and sometimes it's a challenge. So I thought maybe just listening to you might be an interesting thing to explore.
Absolutely, and I think. I kind of have 2 ways of answering this question. So one of my qualifiers is that it's lived experience. So yes, with my eating disorder, with my depression, with my suicidal thoughts and fantasies in my lifetime, I have an ability to speak to that experience. I trust that I have, within that lived experience in my practice, I have tools to offer girls. I very intuitively understand how to do this work. And part of that, I don't understand how to completely articulate that. It's an intuition around how to hold that space for girls on that sort of academic, more linear brain around this healing modality is that we have a team of counselors and therapists. So if any girl ever expresses that she is really active in the work of harming herself or wanting to commit suicide, we have sort of on call, especially at the retreat, a counselor. And then we also have one of the mentors that comes with us has a psychology background in counseling. So I make sure I really have a resource and sort of a village community of people that are youth workers, counselors, therapists, eating disorder recovery specialists. So if we ever need to point girls in a different direction in terms of more help, then we have that as well.
Yeah, that's great. So you're operating in the realm of the experiential, or what we would call the Aquarian realm,
yes.
as well
yes.
as in the Piscean realm, which is the realm of knowledge. And I think there's value to both. And that's
absolutely
great.
We've been really clear. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that with knowledge, if it's lacking experience, that's where especially young people who are so intuitive and in touch, they may not be in touch necessarily with like what's going to happen in my life 10 years from now, but on an energetic level of like what's going on and really being in touch with what's happening beneath the surface. Young people are incredibly intuitive. And so if you can connect with them on that level from experience, that's the greatest level there is.
Oh my God. Yes. And I think that's where people, if you're not connected in the youth space or don't know young people, I think that the preconceived notion is, oh, all they do is just stay on their phones and they don't really know what's going on. But kids are woke as fuck. Like I am so overwhelmed by how open, sensitive, smart, young people are. I feel so much hope for the next generation. And, you know, a lot of the girls that we're getting have been through therapy, have been through their eating disorder recovery, counseling, have, you know, seen their school counselor, have been to the doctor, have been or are still medicated and aren't finding answers. And I sometimes feel like these kids come maybe as a last resort from their parents. We hear from a lot of, you know, scared parents, concerned parents. And then we hear after, like, my kid came back a different person. What happened? And I mean, really, my only answer is like, I just listened. I made them feel seen and heard and not separate. Right. And that can be so shifting for such a sensitive and open nervous system in these young people to really feel like they're in a safe space and they're supported. It's, you know, the work is very deep and intense, but it's also quite simple at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting when you talk about how a lot of the young girls who come to see you have already dealt with these more dense experiences. And isn't that what we're doing in a yoga practice, is moving from the dense, you know, the intellectual or the physical side of the practice, eventually into a more subtle experience. So if somebody has had some traumatic experience or they're dealing with some issues with their mental health and they've done all of this dense work, it really provides an avenue to move into a deeper experience. And that's incredible because it's a lot harder to get that from a knowledge-based counselor. There needs to be something that's going beneath the surface. And they might not even be open sometimes to go beneath the surface if they haven't opened themselves up to trying some things that are a little more surface-based.
Absolutely. And it's so fascinating to me to watch that experience from when they walk in that first day. I mean, we pick them up at the ferry terminal. We take them on a ferry. We drive them up the road on Galliano Island. We get settled in. You know, their eyes are like, no one can pick their eyes up off of the floor. Their voice is shaking when they say their name. And after sort of that first settling and introduction, and then we move into a practice and some breath work and some journaling. And by evening, they're already different people. There's been a shift. And what I recognize in that is how our young people are not in enough community spaces that feel safe to them. And I think that's something that maybe is a bit lost in this generation that is raising our teenagers, is that everything is sort of pulled into a bit more nuclear. You kind of have your family and that's it. And so seeing creating space and community amongst girls, and to give them possibilities for women. So I bring a team of mentors just to see other possibilities other than, say, their mom or their dad or their aunt or their teacher or their soccer coach or whoever is around them. Just even in that, it's a safety that's held there. There's massive shifts in it that can occur just by settling down, calming their nervous system, sort of allowing them to feel, safe.
Totally. And there's a great value in this, just being able to speak what's going on inside your head. Because I found that in my life, in my years of recovery, is like, if you hold on to these patterns inside your head and you keep repeating them and repeating them and repeating them, they cause so much destruction and suffering in your life. And sometimes it's just saying it outside, even one time, to a pair of listening ears, and you can calm the storm within.
It's incredible. We do this exercise. It's just one question, and the question is, if you really knew me, you would know. And we sit in a circle and you wait until you're ready to say it. So it's sort of a popcorn answer, but trust me, no one is going all at once. It takes a really long time. We probably sit in that circle for over an hour. And each time one person shares, there's a big breath in and a big breath out. And we just sit and we hold that space until you're ready to say that thing. And for so many of those girls, and ourselves included, because we participate, it's things we've never said aloud. And I just think the simple act of being witnessed can be so powerful for someone to, hear your story, and for you to get whatever that is outside of your body can be such a massive release. And I love that question. We do it with our adults too. I do it in my trainings. I do it kind of always, but just that one thing, that you think you're holding secret and it's ugly and it's lonely and, no one would ever understand, and you speak it and you have a whole room of people speaking whatever their thing is. And you realize, you're not so fucked up. You're not alone, and everyone feels this way. And I feel so passionate about creating spaces where we get to talk about those things, because otherwise we're just walking around pretending, and it's so dangerous.
Right. I heard Ram Dass call it somebody training, he called it. Like, I'll pretend that I'm somebody and you'll pretend that you're somebody, and then we'll just sort of bump into each other until you get sick of it.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you bringing up kind of the comparison between dance and the yoga industry, and sort of that obsession with, the yoga body or what it looks like to do yoga. And I just find even within the industry, when I'm teaching or I'm traveling, I'm still kind of sick of bumping into somebody's and, frustrated. And even as a young person kind of growing up in the yoga industry, because I've been teaching now for 10 years, in my younger years, I was really looking for teachers who were real, who weren't who weren't preaching and saying one thing and then doing another in their life. And so it's still, and then as we sort of raise up this next generation of yoga teachers, I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the industry. It could kind of go both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that we're really passionate about in the work that we do is going back to this root teaching of, yoga. The word yoga means, in the old books, oneness with God. And that doesn't mean especially some man in the sky, just because of the marketing of religion that has come down through the line. God it means the best version of yourself.
Yes.
And so how do you as a person hold space for another person to see the best version of themselves rather than somebody?
Absolutely.
And it starts with you, and then once you're able to access that, maybe you can hold space for somebody to do the same, which is the work that you're doing. You've had these experiences, and now you're providing opportunities for others.
Yeah. And I think that, could you imagine when did you start practicing yoga? How old were you?
Well, I got interested in meditation when I was 16 years old.
Cool. That's so cool.
The funny thing about that is, though, like, it was such a strange concept to my family and the people around me that, nobody really got it until fast forward 20 years. And,
Yeah.
and we all sort of went, oh, okay, cool. Whereas, if I was I had a teacher who held space for me to do meditation, and he started a meditation club. And on the first day, there was 2 people, me and another guy.
Yeah.
And then the next day there was me. The other guy didn't come.
Yeah.
And then they didn't allow it to continue because they said, oh, you can't be alone in a dark room with the teacher. And I thought, I'm a 16 years old and pretty street smart kid. Like, I'm going to be fine. So they, and that was a really sad thing. However, thank God there was somebody there who could at least give me an opportunity to meditate. So I think it's crucial, because I look back on all my years of education and getting in trouble, and I still hold that person as a light in my life, even though I haven't seen him since I was a teenager.
Yeah. Isn't it incredible? I think so much back to that time in my life where, I can remember, like one sentence from a dance teacher that was so like harming and dangerous. And I remembered it for the rest of my life. And then, another word from my English teacher that was so powerful. And I think back to it so often. And so when I look at myself as a mentor for young people, regardless if I only see that one person one time, that there is an ability to plant a seed there. And, there is an ability just for them to see something. Teenagers often seem pretty disinterested in yoga, especially if I'm going into the high school space, let's say 40 kids. But I know that on some level, someone is picking up something, that they're going to re-pick up again at some point in their life. And that really, really excites me. And I think that kind of what we were talking about, our young people, and I'm sure you see it with your daughter all the time, is just how open, how smart, how, correct they are in terms of how they see and feel the world. And I think the more that we can keep ourselves open to them and to guide them, to keep them that curious, to keep them that open, and to live in a less binary, intense, this is the way you're supposed to be, look, act world, the better that we'll be. This next generation is really going to change us.
Yes. And it's definitely, as a parent, and you can tell me about how you relate to this as a teacher and as a mentor, as a parent and a yogi, one thing that I'm learning is that my job is not to tell my daughter who she's supposed to be. That is really a dangerous thing.
Yes.
And my job is to create a safe environment, the same way that you would grow plants in a garden. Like a tulip bulb has the intelligence already programmed in it to grow into the full expression of matter, to push out this beautiful flower. Well, a human is the same way. So my job is to create a safe container for her to express herself. And I think that's so important. And I think, that's some of what you've talked about with dance. Like a dancer is supposed to look like this. A dancer is supposed to behave like this. Or a yogi is supposed to look like this. A yogi is supposed to behave like this. When really what we're dealing with here is how can we create a container, a safe space for that person to come into that full expression of who they are that has been there since they were born.
Absolutely. And I think that, beautiful metaphor. And you guys are doing such an amazing job with Marley. And it's so interesting to see when young people come into that retreat space with us, they're already sort of holding, and they're kind of layered or sort of wrapped in, this is who society, my parents, et cetera, have told me to be. One of my favorite questions is, who were you before the world told you who to be? And, the conditioning, especially for our girls, is, it's shifting a little bit, but a lot of it is around be a good girl, be smart, but not too smart, be pretty, but not too pretty, be, outgoing, but, don't have too much of an opinion. And, be an innocent little girl. And the second your body develops, then you're hypersexualized, and then you're supposed to be super sexual. And there's just a lot, going on for them at that age. And so for them to recover who they were and who they innately are before getting this sort of conditioning and this, this like sort of global broadcast and you are not enough and here's how to be better, for them to reclaim that in a safe space and almost practice kind of trying it on again. And part of the work at Girlvana is to be silly. Like we play a lot of games and we dance and we have fun and we laugh because there's a lot of innocence that's lost in our teenage years. And there's a lot of wanting to grow up too quickly. And there's a lot of wanting to sort of please and be validated in terms of sexual experiences and hookup culture and a lot of gray area around consent. And the reason why I see the practice of yoga being so powerful at that age is to really learn what it is to be embodied. And when you're going out to a party or you are, in a situation where, you feel like you're being pressured to do something, if you're in your body, you are less likely to be victimized because you have power in being in your body. Whereas a lot of girls are either feel shame about their body, they're not connected to their developing body. They see their body as something someone wants to attain, or have. And so they're really upstairs in their heads. And that's where sort of drinking and drugs come in because they want to sort of numb out that awkward, insecure feeling. And then they're prey. And so the practice can be very powerful for putting girls back into their bodies to make powerful decisions in when that moment arrives. And that's something that I've seen time and time again with our girls in terms of consent, their yes and no, and how powerful they can be in those experiences.
Yeah, I love the way embodiment, just being who you are, even in relationship to your own body, that is that container. That is you creating the container so that they can see who they are and then they can show up as their best self in relationship to because it's a intense world, even with they're showing kids, even here in Canada, well, this is the place where you go if somebody was to come into this school with a gun. I mean, that's a pretty severe world that we're living in.
Yes.
And that's on the macro level. That's like, this is how it's going to affect all of you. And then you take these young people who are in pain and not sure who they are, who are going to inflict that on other people. Well, man, you're going to have some pretty solid self-awareness to navigate that.
Yeah. And I think in terms of mental health and even, I mean, the stigma is lifting, but I think for me growing up, I didn't have any words to sort of put around what I was feeling in terms of my depression. And I was, I felt sad and non-functioning and suicidal, but I would never imagine speaking that out loud to anyone ever. And I think that it's still, when girls get this space and we start to have these conversations, they start to go, oh, okay, well, I thought that if I said this, I would be so kind of ostracized and fucked up and like sent to a mental ward. But really, I just need a space to say, like, I'm really sad and I don't understand what the purpose of living is. And to me, that's a very spiritual question. That's a seeking question. That's beginner stages of the path. And it's not scary or fucked up. It's beautiful that you are questioning your existence because this is where this spiritual journey can really begin for you. And so instead of listening to that, of course, I'm not their parent. And so I'm not as attached to say if I gave birth to this person and being in this much pain, I can hold the space in an unbiased way. But hearing that and giving them space to kind of voice that and reframing this idea of, I hear you and you must be really hurting, but this is also an opening and an opportunity for you versus a parent. In a lot of these cases, just get terrified, send them to a Western doctor and they're on Prozac, They're being medicated so quickly, because we're scared to hear that they feel so intensely. And what does that mean about us? And what does that mean about their future? And how does this reflect on me as a parent? And, so I understand that parents are scared to hear those things.
Do you do, courses for parents within the Girlvana platform?
So, maybe about 4 years ago, I started leading women's retreats just because everyone was like, I want to come to Girlvana, but I'm not a teenager. And so I just started leading like weekends just for women, and the content was really the same. We were still answering if you really knew me. We were still talking about, feminism and where we're at as women and what we're feeling in terms of societal pressures. And so I've been really lucky that I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of mothers. I also have some relationships to some of the fathers, that have sent their girls to Girlvana. We've talked about sort of different ideas in terms of sort of workshops for parents. I think there's still a little part of me that I'm like, do parents really want to come and listen to me talk about this stuff when, they're the parent and I'm just, some yoga teacher. But, when girls get picked up from the ferry, we are there and available to speak with parents, and we get a lot of messages, a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. I had a woman call me yesterday, and her daughter just broke up with her boyfriend, and it was not a very good relationship, very abusive. And we sort of interfered in that. And she called and said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, we're able to open up that dialogue and be there for families. So in different ways, each sort of experience is kind of unique in terms of how we support families moving forward after the retreats. Yeah.
I think that for me, even just having this conversation with you, I would say that parents do want to have that conversation, because I think a lot of them, when you love a child so much, it can be really hard to see who they are because you don't want to face the pain, which sounds kind of like a shallow thing, but it's like a blinder. It's like, I'm going to love this person. I mean, and that's how people end up enabling harmful behavior, or whatever the process might be, or whether the parent has been really hard on the child because they expect them to be somebody they're not. Or I think it's really important that, I mean, obviously if a parent is open to sending their child to see you, they are open to seeing things in a new light. Absolutely. But I think it's pretty key to, just like if somebody is going to Alcoholics Anonymous, they have the opportunity as well to, the parents can go for support, or whoever can go for support. And I do see the work that you're doing as so essential for the young people, but also it's like more conversations about, okay, well, what do we do as, I'm a young parent who's male, who I want to be a good father to my daughter. And I was around women, but I don't know what it's like to deal with that. I mean, I just do my best.
Yeah. And I mean, that's all we can do is that. And I think that I'm seeing this sort of movement in much more conscious parenting, and especially for fathers in terms of their involvement. There's a lot of Girlvana girls that we have with fathers that are pretty mind-blowing in terms of the space that they can hold for their girls. And of course, we see the opposite in parenting as well. I mean, there's a lot of Girlvana girls, we never meet their families. Those parents aren't getting out of their cars, after the retreat happens, or we're driving that girl home, or we're driving that girl back to her safe house, and we see a lot of parents that are not there and not involved. We do a lot of fundraising in terms of scholarships. And so a lot of our girls are coming from not, mom and dad, safe, healthy, happy households as well. We get a mixed bag. We have professional hockey players' daughters and Real Housewives of Vancouver daughters, to also, girls that are in foster care, and girls that are, in different situations. And so it's very interesting, but what do they talk about the most in those circles? Their parents.
Yeah.
They are talking about, their mom or lack thereof, their father or lack thereof, the way they watch their parents, the way they see their parents, fight or divorce or cheat or abuse. That they're talking about mom and dad for sure.
Yeah. Especially, when even with Marley, sometimes you think, oh, she's busy doing something, she's not paying attention. She is paying attention. 24/7. She hears everything. She repeats things later on that you're like, oh, wow, you heard that? So, it's talk about Yogi Bhajan. He once said, be a teacher to a child, not a parent, because a parent the relationship lasts 18 years, and a teacher, the relationship lasts a lifetime. And that being said, being a teacher, you have to have integrity, just like you were saying, walking the talk. If you don't have integrity as a teacher, you're going to face all kinds of resistance, and the pain is going to be unbearable.
Well, and that's something I get asked a lot. How did you get through your eating disorder? Or how do you, be a mentor? How do you, speak in front of all these people and say that you love yourself? And I said, it's because I have, thousands of daughters and they're looking at me. And so I can't still be here self-loathing and telling the next generation to find love for themselves. It just doesn't work that way. Their bullshit detectors are so high that they know if I'm a fraud the second I walk in the room. And so there has been a massive accountability piece in terms of who I am in order to support girls. That's cleaned up so much of my act. And it is often not what we say. It is what we do that our young people are picking up on. And I say that, I teach a lot, and a lot of students are mothers and into younger kids, maybe not teenagers yet. But they say, I was just in Winnipeg and I had a few women say the same thing to me. And not even just with their daughters, but with their boys, saying, one girl was talking about, she was taking a photo and her 7-year-old son said, no, mommy, I don't want to be in the photo. I'm ugly. And she said, he is getting that from me. Even though I tell him he's amazing and perfect and all of these things, he has seen me be in front of a camera lens and say, no, I'm ugly. And so it's really not what we're telling them. It's what we're saying and feeling about ourselves that they are most connected to. And so I feel that as a mentor, I feel that that's who we need to be as parents. My parents were super proud of me. My mom always told me, that I was important and that I was special. But, I picked up more on where she didn't feel that in her own life. And I carried that more than I carried what they told me. And I think it's so, so key to remember around young people that, they're not really listening to what you say so much as what you're telling yourself, your own inner dialogue, your own interactions, that they are sponges for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Especially, hearing the I'm ugly part, like it just breaks your heart to hear that. It also brings up the conversation about, in this age where we've got the phone in our hand constantly, even creating healthy boundaries around that is so crucial, because I think that the technology itself is a neutral thing. I don't think that it's good or bad. I think it's our relationship to it that's good or bad.
I agree. Yeah.
And even like asking for talk about consent. Like, consent could be asking your child if you can take their photo and post it online, or asking them if you can have a hug. Like the classic, like, go and give Aunt Betsy a kiss.
Totally.
Isn't that the beginning of the conversation about consent?
1,000,000%. And of course, so by the time, the kids get to this age of 12 and 13, 14, they already understand that their body is not theirs because no one's ever asked them.
Right.
And it's so, I think that there's sort of like, again, this misconception, like, oh, kids these days and but it's like, no one has ever told them, this body is your body and you get to choose, because from a young age, we're just kind of, you go kiss so-and-so and you go hug so-and-so, and we're picking up babies, and we're, not to say that, obviously children, if they're crying and need to be cared for, but, I have one woman, a student of mine, she's like a 2-year-old, and she says, even when I'm changing a diaper, even though she can't even speak, I'll say, okay, is it okay if I touch you here? Okay, I'm going to change your diaper, and kind of talks her daughter through this process. Because on some level, they're hearing that kind of consent. They're hearing that question, from an earlier age. And I think that's so, so important for kids to grow up knowing that this is their body. And I just taught over the weekend at this, festival. There's hundreds of people in this big ballroom, and, I was talking about, and most of them again are women, talking about, reclaiming this space, this one body that you have. And I got so many messages of women just saying, holy shit, I'm, 45 years old. I'm 50 years old. I'm 22 years old. And I've never heard that. I've never heard anyone say, this is your body. This is your own. And I think that's the beauty. And this is why I'm really passionate about women in yoga in this sense, is because that in some way has been taken from us on some level. And so I've been studying Katona yoga a little bit with this teacher, Dejas, out of New York. And she says the practice is political. Being in your body, being fully embodied is a political act, especially as a woman. And I'm passionate about teaching that to our younger girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, even the word politics is sometimes people think, well, especially in exercise yoga land, that yoga shouldn't be political. Well, the word political actually means to care about people. So it has to be 100% political, just because politics has gone so far away from the actual meaning. But you know what? This is all these conversations that I'm having on this show, and this conversation I'm having with you, this is the time of change. And those young people that are coming through your Girlvana programs are the young people that are going, we tried your democracy, it didn't work. We tried your politics, it didn't work. And so it's an exciting time. It's a painful time. It comes with great pressure. But if we can learn some techniques and some practices to see who we are in relationship to the pressure, that we're not the pressure. I was I was quoting Tupac Shakur this week when he has this line where he says, "I was given this world, I didn't make it," and I think that's a real thing. I was given this world as a young person, and now the next generation of young people are going, "All right, that's enough," and I think, yay, hooray, it's a great time to be alive. Even though it's a scary time, even though there's a lot of pressure, the fact that we're having these conversations, there are teachers like yourself doing this work, it's exciting as well.
Oh yeah, I feel so much hope. And it's like, yeah, exactly what you said. They're given this world, and we are a part of giving them this world. And a lot of, we can see how it's shifting, and it's so beautiful. And they have so much to teach us. I mean, we had on our retreat a couple of weeks ago, one of our mentors was gender fluid. So this is someone who grew up in a female body, could never make peace or sense with the fact that they were a female, came out as gay, early 20s, and still was, identifying as female. And then last year just had this massive breakdown, very suicidal, called the suicide hotline, and started to make sense of their identity, and have now transitioned into this gender fluid, trans space, this non-binary world. And so, their pronouns are they and them, and they came to the retreat and spoke to our teens. Within 24 hours, we had another girl, a teen on the retreat, come out as gay because they felt like they had the space and the example. But what this mentor had said, sort of in their reflection from the retreat, is how open and amazing young people are. You say, oh, my pronouns are they and them, and I don't identify as female. Everyone's like, got it. Then I'm trying to explain this, to my parents, and they're going, well, what do you mean? Okay, so you say they and you say them, yes, instead of, her or him. Okay, so they're not a girl or a boy. It's really confusing for our older generation, but our young people are growing up in high schools with gender neutral bathrooms. We're not calling, if we mean something is stupid, we don't say, oh, that's so gay. I mean, that's how I grew up. The languaging that we were using then has shifted so profoundly. And I really feel like this next generation is growing up with a lot more fluidity, a lot more space for them to explore their identity, who they love, who they choose to be, way more freedom than we ever had. And that's going to also change the world, because there's a lot of permission for people to be who they are, way more than I remember growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's some of the pain, is getting away from that old Piscean knowledge base.
Yeah.
I had a conversation. I'm a big fan of the band Against Me and Laura Jane Grace, and I listened to them when she was Tom, and that transition. Reading her book, as somebody who's very open, I grew up around punk rock music and activism, and I really pay attention. Even for me, reading the book about her transition and how trapped she felt as a young person, it really opened my eyes to to the humanity of it, rather than the like, I'm a this and you're a that. That's the Piscean knowledge-based
Absolutely.
language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'll find myself in a conversation with somebody who's my age, who's like, well, I don't understand like why it has to be this pronoun and that pronoun.
Yeah.
And they go into this whole like political or like knowledge-based giving people labels. And I have to stop the person and be like, what if it was your daughter who came to you and said, Dad, I don't feel comfortable in my body. I mean, it would be amazing if she felt open enough to say that to a person who I'm having this conversation with. But what if that person was really struggling? Would you throw all of this heady, no compassion at all political BS in their face? Like, I hope not, because you're going to lose your child and you're going to take away that safe space from them.
Yes, absolutely.
It's so essential that, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it can bury kids at a very young age. And that was a part of this mentor when they were telling their story, said when they were a little girl to their mom, said, I don't feel like a girl. Maybe I want to be a boy. And she kind of brushed it off and said, oh, that's ridiculous. You're a girl. And they didn't uncover that memory for 20 years of all of this pain, because it was just one thing that said, well, you're not allowed to do that. This is who you are. And as a young person, you go, okay, well, you're my parent and you're an adult and you say this. And so it really can shut people down. And even when I look at, our branding as a young, for young people, what we're saying on the website, and even in terms of our language, are we being as inclusive as possible? We've started to shift even, Girlvana is, for teen girls or those self-identifying as teen girls. We're super open to that. Whoever wants to come into this space is welcome. We're really cognizant of not showing just a bunch of white kids, where is our diversity? All of our scholarships this year have gone to girls of color. I'm looking at my mentorship team right now. I mean, they're incredible women, but they're all white. And so where can, we really show our representation so that our young people feel like their voices matter, their bodies matter, their skin color matters. And this is really, what needs to happen. And I think even 8 years ago when I started Girlvana, I was in a predominantly white neighborhood. And so our photos show white girls. And that really needs to shift in terms of, the outreach that we've done over the years and who we are giving this work access to. We are definitely doing that. But, even in our captions on Instagram or our little write-ups on our website, are we speaking, in more broad terms so that all young people can see this and go, okay, then that is for me. And that's so, so important.
Mm-hmm. And that while you navigate all of that you're seeing the person, because I find that with all of these shifts and changes that are happening, and we start to classify people, even when it comes from a healthy place, that you're, making space for people of all color, all gender to take part in these things. We can even go into the intellectual side of that, where we're starting to, even from a healthy place, classify somebody based on a demographic, where really it's important that we do the healing in the intellectual world, in the world of how you identify. It's important, it's valuable.
Yeah.
And while you do that, being able to see through that and see who the person really is, even beyond the labels, because
absolutely,
we all have identity, and we're always going to have identity, but there's also some part of us that is beyond the identity. Like, for example, I look at my daughter. I don't love her because she's a girl or a boy, or because she believes this or doesn't believe that, or she does this or does that. I love her beyond all of that. And then within that, she can choose to identify however she likes. And if I'm doing my job as a good parent, I still have that love for her, and I support whatever identity it's like we're operating in two realms, the realm of the head and the realm of the heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and hopefully we can navigate that without getting stuck in the head.
Yes.
Or, sometimes the danger is with all of this spiritual work is we get so connected to the heart that we sort of leave behind that this person doesn't feel accepted because of their identity and because of our culture and society. And we don't want to alienate them because we're just saying, well, it's all love anyway, so what's the big deal?
Absolutely. And that's a fine line in terms of how we do that and how we offer that. But I think what you said about the way, in terms of your parenting, I mean, that is revolutionary. There's not, that's a high consciousness of parenting. I think there are a lot of parents that are hell bent on, okay, I had a little girl, I had a little boy. That's what they're going to be. And they're going to grow up to be this. And when they're not that, I think there's a lot of work for parents to do to come to terms with, my kid is gay or my kid is doesn't feel comfortable in the gender that they were born into. And they kind of have to come to terms with how to find that love again, because that love was based on a condition. And so when we're talking about true unconditional love, I love you without the conditions of how you identify, it's powerful. And we have to really take a look at that and how we're loving people. Is this with some form of condition? I feel so much hope for, this parenting generation, especially in terms of who I'm seeing raising kids. Oh my God. I'm so excited for these kids.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm sure glad that you took the time to talk about this. What a great conversation. Can you tell people, Ally, how they can get in touch with you if they, say they have a child that wants to go to Girlvana, or say they want to just follow the work that you're doing? Or
Totally. Yeah. The easiest way is Instagram, because that's sort of where it all kind of goes down. But Girlvana, so it's like Nirvana. So GIRLVANA yoga. So that's on Instagram, and that's also .com on our website. And we run, a couple of retreats a year. We've got classes going on all over the world, and we train teachers too. So we look for certified female yoga teachers who are passionate about creating Girlvana programs in their communities. So we do about 4 teacher trainings a year. So all that. And then I'm just Ally Maz, ALLYMAZ on Instagram as well. And that's all my other things, other than Girlvana too, are up there.